A Symphony of Knowledge is brought to you in part by Enhance, a biohacking nootropic supplement company engineered to take your performance and lifestyle to the absolute next level. Visit www.enhance.com. That is www.enhvnce.com. Don't get that mixed. And check out their newest nootropic stack that is finally accepting pre-orders. So please be sure to use the coupon code ASOC10. That is ASOK number 10 for 10% off any and all supplements. A Symphony of Knowledge is also brought to you in part by Triunfa, where knowledge and wisdom meet medicine. Please go to www.triumphvitality.com and use the coupon code ASOK1 for 15% off. That is ASOK1 for 15% off any and all products.
And we are about to take the step out of matter. The planet is on a collision course with the most profound event it's possible to imagine, the freeing of organic life from the chrysalis of matter.
Hey, what's going on, guys? I'll be here once more, back at you with episode 3. At last, we will get started with some really good science that touches on electromagnetism. We're going to be talking about HAARP. We're going to be talking about the ionosphere, electromagnetism, radio waves, different forms of frequencies that penetrate walls, that penetrate through your body, that are all over our atmosphere, ionization. We're going to be talking about the body's electromagnetic field, and we're going to be talking about also the deliberate spraying and agenda of companies like HAARP and many other out there who, to their defense, might not know what they're doing in terms of the harm on the health of the public. Because obviously, there are true military defense applications and reasons for why these types of technologies were invented in the first place. And that's exactly where I want to start. During the early 1900s, really early, we can find that funding for what we'd call geoengineering, which back then I believe they used weather modification, the first pieces of funding and scientific published articles and research centers were established during the early to mid 1900s to start to do the research necessary to be able to learn how to control the climate or weaponize the climate, etc. Because we don't know, if potentially in the future someone can use that type of technology against us. And I think that there's sufficient information to back that statement. That for sure, there's a possibility out there that someone can develop a technology to be able to produce, climate change and use it and weaponize it for war and other sorts of advantages. But what we don't see are the health articles about these technologies that were developed. Now, for everybody out there that's listening, I want you guys to get this straight. I don't believe that any form of invention that was produced by human hand was deliberately and intentionally created to mislead, to brainwash, to kill, to hurt. I believe that in every occasion, if there's something that's invented, just like knowledge itself can be used to heal and can be used to kill yourself in every sense of the word. And the same thing applies for these technologies, right? It's kind of like asking ourselves right now, is Facebook, is Instagram, is Snapchat, is Twitter, all these social media platforms good for us or bad for us? Do they connect us or divide us? Well, it depends on how you look at it. Because in many ways, it has evolved into polarities. You have a section of the Facebook world that's positive and a Facebook section of, that's horrific. But that's not what we're here to debate. We're here to understand the sciences and the research that's being done at these centers to find out exactly how they know these things are operating and why we need to know and why it's important, right? So what I have here is a published article. I believe this was in 2001 or so. And this is when, honestly, when technology started to develop, wireless technology per se, and the internet, cell phone towers went up, Wi-Fi, like all these things that produce electromagnetic radiation were placed all around the city for transmission of data. And get this clear, we have electromagnetic frequencies all around us that are naturally occurring. The same electromagnetic energy that allows for your heart to beat and the cells to divide is the same energy that is being used as a weapon. I'm quoting here Dr. Magda Havas. He says, it turns out that most living things are fantastically sensitive to vanishingly small EMF exposures. Living cells interpret such exposures as a part of our normal cellular activities. Think heartbeats, brain waves, and cell division itself, etc. The problem is, man-made electromagnetic exposures aren't what you would call quote-unquote normal. They are artificial artifacts with unusual intensities, signaling characteristics, pulsing patterns, and waveforms, and they can misdirect cells in a myriad of ways. In his expert testimony, Mr. Ula, North Carolina, in 2005, on placement of antennas, Dr. Magda Havas explained that biological effects of radio frequency radiation have been documented and range from cancers to cognitive disorders and sleeping dysfunctions among humans, abnormal behavior, reduced milk yield, miscarriages, premature death among farm animals. People who live near broadcast antennas and cell phone antennas have a high risk of developing leukemia. An increasing number of individuals are becoming more sensitive to this form of radiation and exhibit signs of what we call now electro-hypersensitivity, which has been recognized as a disability called functional impairment in Sweden. The illness appears to be increasing and may already affect approximately 35% of the population, according to one estimate in the United Kingdom. Havas has also presented a 50-page report in 2007 to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors that was then considered a proposed San Francisco Earthlink Wi-Fi network. So, we know that there's a distinction between natural electromagnetic frequencies, which are all around us and are symbiotic with chemical structure, with atomic structure. Every form of matter in this world abides through electromagnetic physical laws. And you can actually see this. What I want you guys to look at, this is so exciting for me right now, is to look up on the YouTube the primer fields. And you'll find, maybe I can pull it up actually. It'll take me a second. But the primer fields are basically experiments conducted to show the way plasma behaves in a vacuum. So let me get this pulled up. I have my phone right now with me. And I'm going to give you a quick definition that he has put down. I'm going to be giving you guys all the definitions all the time, honestly, because it's important to learn how to define terms, because it helps us conceptualize ideas and have a perception of what we're talking about in a more direct sense. So the videos are created by David Lapointe, and let me see, I'm going to go to part 1. He has about 12,000 subscribers, right? This guy is a genius. He's a scientist. Let me see if I can get a description of his page. Here we go. Version 1, part 1. All right, so what he's explaining in this part 1, he says in this video series, actually he's explaining the whole definition of, he's defining what he's going to be showing you in the next few videos, because he has like 3 or 4 videos. This is published in December 17th, 2012. So in this video series, the currently accepted theories of physics and astrophysics are shaken to the core by a radical new theory of fundamental forces in all matter. It's not a radical new theory. We've known this. But the technologies haven't advanced enough to be able to find out what's happening, how these forces are actually working in the subatomic level. You will be amazed as a magnetic model of the dome at CERN is used to create 100 millimeter diameter plasma sun with a 300 millimeter diameter equatorial disk of plasma around it. All the plasma videos are actual footage with no enhancements or manipulations other than speed. In other words, this is real thing. Hard to believe, but it's all true. And what this gentleman breaks down is plasma physics and how light behaves in a vacuum and how light behaves in an atmosphere. There are 3 to 4 videos, I believe, on here. They're about an hour each. Take the time to watch his experiments. Because these experiments on he does these magnetic dome-like structures, and he creates a northern polarity and a southern polarity, right? Kind of like 2 positive and negative magnets. And what he does is he puts on the horizon, he puts just glass, right? He puts a glass in between a northern and southern polarity. So he can put a mass. And in this case, the mass is tiny steel balls. And these balls basically organize themselves according to the electromagnetic energy that is being created by these magnets. And so when you see one by one each steel ball organize itself into a perfect pattern that is symbiotic with sacred geometry and tetrahedral patterns, you start to understand that these forces are working even in the smallest subatomic particles. Therefore, the theory of gravity is completely unnecessary. And in fact, the theory of gravity is not a very good one anyway. It tends to only work when people want it to work. In my opinion, one of the only factors that we have to consider is densities and electromagnetic components. These are only things that can explain what gravity is poorly trying to explain. And this man, if you watch the video series, will break down every last bit of information that will explain the structure of subatomic particles, the structure of elements, and how they became manifested into material substance using these magnetic field properties in a physical time and space that we're in. And so, obviously, we need to educate ourselves in this new form, or quote-unquote new form of science, which to my knowledge, I know that the ancient Egyptians knew about, and most of all, if not all, the ancient civilizations knew about. They understood the electromagnetic property of our world, and they utilized stones, they utilized technology, information, to be able to create magnificent structures that to this day, people are in complete awe. So, get educated on this electromagnetic, watch the video series, and you might want to come back and listen to the rest of this podcast, because we're going to be diving down exactly how these radio waves travel through the atmosphere, reach our ionosphere, and affect the entire planet. So what I'm going to actually do for you guys is pull up a definition of HAARP and what type of technology HAARP utilizes and why they're doing what they're doing. Here we go. So if you didn't believe HAARP can be used as a weapon, then you obviously don't believe nuclear energy can be used as a weapon either. In order to understand HAARP as a weapon, either you have to understand or generally accept the explanation of technology by others who do understand it. That is, if you don't possess the intelligence to understand the technology they're talking about. So, sound is a mechanical wave that is an oscillation of pressure transmitted through a solid, liquid, or gas, composed of frequencies within the range of hearing and of a level sufficiently strong to be heard, or the sensation stimulated in organs of hearing by such vibrations. Sound waves and radio waves possess some of the same properties and characteristics, yet utilize different mediums of propagation. In other words, sound waves use a physical mechanical pressure to be transferred through the air as a solid, liquid, or gas. That's through the air as a solid or a liquid. Whereas radio waves use electromagnetic energy as a type of quote-unquote pressure and can equally pass through the air, liquid, or solid, with the exception of reflective metals. Now, this is from geoengineeringwatch.org. There are tens, if not hundreds, of scientific published articles on here that you can look up. And I have one here produced by Stanford, and it's a geophysical research paper, volume 35, L12101. It says geometric modulation. And they talk about, because we have different centers. HAARP is not the only one. There's multiple all over the globe, right? And if you don't believe so, you need to read papers from Congress, right? And what I'm going to do is actually give you a little, let's see here. I need you guys to research this as well. Download this document, read it, because you will be astounded. I have a document here by Congress, and they're listing basically the federal activities in weather modification in 1978. And on this paper, they describe they've already been doing weather modifications for the last 30 years. I'm going to read you guys a little bit here. The federal government has been involved for over 30 years in a number of aspects of weather modification through activities of both the Congress and the executive branch. Since 1947, weather modification bills pertaining to research, support, operations, policy studies, regulations, liabilities, activity, reporting, establishment of panels and committees in international concerns have been introduced in the Congress. There have been hearings of many of these proposed measures, and oversight hearings have also been conducted on pertinent ongoing programs. A total of 6 public laws specifically on weather modification have been enacted since 1953, while others have included provision which in some way are relevant to weather modification. Resolutions dealing with the use of weather modification technology as a weapon by U.S. military forces and promotion of the UN treaty prohibiting such activities have been introduced in both houses of Congress, and one such resolution was passed by the state. This is, again, a document, 1978, May. Document between the federal government, Congress, and their special funding for these types of research and sciences. Right? None of this, up to this point, is malevolent. But we start to see the implementation of certain companies, certain ideas, and this type of technology gets used in a very ignorant way, because it's not taken into account every health precaution. And for the sake of profit, they're willing to put people at stake. And it's up to you to defend yourself with knowledge, supplementation, and your lifestyle. Now, what I'm going to read to you guys about exactly what happens I'm going to explain to you guys exactly what happens, because right here, I'm going to pull up right now, let's see, I'm going to pull up a diagram that shows me exactly how this technology works, and there's many different forms of uses, okay? So it's not just one use, there are many uses. So here we go. Through the science community, though the science community is desperately trying to link pre-quake atmospheric heating to some unknown phenomenon of an atmospheric coupling with the pressure buildup in the strata, is this a rational conclusion? So what they're talking about here is HAARP's ability to be able to create earthquakes using quote-unquote pressure. They analyzed the atmosphere above Japan before the M9 earthquake hit. They said something along these lines. They said infrared emissions above the epicenter increased dramatically in the days before the devastating earthquake in Japan, says scientists. They say that before the M9 earthquake, the total electron content of the ionosphere increased dramatically over the epicenter, reaching a maximum 3 days before the quake struck. At the same time, satellite observations showed a big increase in infrared emissions from above the epicenter, which peaked in the hours before the quake. In other words, the atmosphere was being heated up. Now, this is something that a lot of people, I thought was an impossibility. When I first heard about, this technology to be able to produce earthquakes, I almost got scared because I thought that I was like this is crazy. Like, how can this possibly be happening? This is impossible. Well, is it? Let's find out together. So what HAARP does, we have to, in order to understand how it's being used, we know that they're using to increase satellite communication capabilities, to be able to have better signals and transmissions, etc., and to be able to harness the power of climate activity, etc. We have to also understand how this can be used as a weapon. Because in the platform in which they are using their technologies, infiltrates every single one of us. It's our space, it's the air we breathe, it's the place in which we live. And if you don't think you're being affected by it, you're completely naive. Because you're sitting in front of a computer that has wireless electromagnetic radiation, and that's hitting your skull, penetrating your cells. We're going to decipher exactly what all this means and what that it does to you. In order to understand HAARP as a weapon, either you have to understand or generally accept the explanation of the technologies of others who do understand it, which is, if you don't possess the intelligence, to understand this technology, go read a book first. Okay? Because we're going to be going through the articles with, the scientific verbiage on exactly what's going on. Don't be left behind. Don't be ignorant. Get down to the facts. Sound is a mechanical wave that is an oscillation of pressure transmitted through a solid, liquid, or gas, composed of frequencies within the range of hearing, and of a level sufficiently strong enough to be heard, or the sensation stimulated in organs of hearing by such vibrations. Sound waves and radio waves possess some of the same properties and characteristics, yet utilize different mediums of propagation. In other words, sound waves use a physical mechanical pressure to be transferred through the air in solid or liquid, Whereas radio waves use electromagnetic energy as a type of quote-unquote pressure and can equally pass through the air, liquid or solid, with the exception of reflective metals. And right here I have another document, and it's a geophysical research paper explaining a geometrical modulation. And this is only one form of research that's being conducted on how they can use these radio frequencies to start receiving more data than we think, right? These things are not only being used the way that they're openly being said they're being used, but there's also a health effect that hasn't been gone under heavy study. And this is why someone like myself is so passionate about sharing the information, because I know it's a place where a lot of people just don't really have too much information about. So, by the way, HAARP stands for the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, and it is a congressional initiated program jointly managed by the U.S. Air Force and U.S. Navy. The United States congressional records show that HAARP is funded by the U.S. government, which I showed you guys in that document published in May 1978, where they also said they were already doing research 30 years before. The U.S. Senate set aside $15 million in 1996 to develop the ability to penetrate the Earth with signals bounced off the ionosphere. This Earth-penetrating tomography has since been developed and used by the U.S. government to look into the planet to a depth of many kilometers in order to locate underground munitions, minerals, and tunnels. The problem is that the frequencies used by HAARP for Earth-penetrating tomography is also within the frequency range most cited for disruption of Earth's own electromagnetic field. HAARP patents states that HAARP can beam radio energy into the auroral electrojet, the curved charged particle stream formed at high latitudes where the solar wind interacts with Earth's magnetic field. The radio energy then disperses over large areas through the duct-like regions of the ionosphere, forming a virtual antenna that can be thousands of miles in length. Such an ELF antenna can emit waves penetrating as deeply as several kilometers into the ground, depending on the geological makeup and the subsurface water conditions in a targeted area. HAARP uses ground-penetrating radar, GPR, to beam pulses of polarized high-frequency radio waves into the ionosphere. And there's tons more of the evidence, right? We have scientific articles published by the Navy that talk about electrical or electronic warfare. University of Lancaster, we have Stanford, we have studies on the Suro ionic spheric heating facilities. We have all forms of scientific research that goes into this. So as you can see, it's not even close to being a conspiracy. The whole conspiracy idea comes from the very idea that they're deliberately and on purpose spraying things that make us dumb and stupid and all this stuff. But honestly, I'm going to stand in their defense, even though I know this is not a possibility or might not be a possibility. I'm going to stand in their defense and say they're doing all these technological advances without knowing the negative adverse health effects. Because the economic, the military, these aspects were more crucial at the time. Right? This situation is more complicated than I can understand, than you can understand. We don't know how this all went down. We just know that it's happening. Right? We have, I also have a really important document. It says the ISCAT Associates. It's EISCAT Associates. And they basically have a 250-page scientific published article that defines everything that these people do, and only some of their experiments. But from what we know, not only HAARP, but NASA which is also, in a sense, part of the military defense system. They, in all respect, also got into these forms of research and technology advances to use for their advantage. Now, I have screenshotted, and I also have a video of Douglas E. Rowland. He works at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. This was recorded July 4th, 2013. He's a heliophysicist in the Laboratory of Space Weather. And it's a conversation regarding lithium dual rocket aerosol space program. Space program. And on this slideshow, on the left of it, we have NASA's logo. And to the right of it, we have bulletins. And here we go. One of them says some sensor swarms. And on the bottom, it says smart dust, cubic a millimeter or less, combined sensors, communications and power supply, floats in air currents, contains nano tags, placed on everything and everywhere for identification and status info. And the very last thing they mentioned was co-opted insects, which, to my imagination, is kind of transhumanistic. Next slideshow we have is often fingerprintless bioarchipelago. It talks about the abilities for these nano tags, which to my knowledge now are considered nanofibers, which are found in genetically modified food and are found in our atmosphere. This is not up for debate. This is finished. These things are out here. But do we know what they're doing? Not necessarily. That's why it's important why we need to find out to be able to protect ourselves. These things have the ability to carry substance that's bacteriological, a virus, prions, parasites, fungi, carcinogens, toxins, hormone regulators, and fatal to disabling, short to long time scales. We have anti-flora, fauna, functionalities. It could be direct or indetectable, binary, natural, genomic, and biohacking. I mean, like, why are these people discussing these things? Like, it sounds not very good, right? The next one headlines microdust weaponry. I beg you, look into this. There's nano-fibers in every single one of us, guaranteed. And I'm going to teach you guys how to remove these things and detox at the very end of this, or even might, push it on to a next episode, because this is a lengthy episode. We got to cover all these stuff. And they define microdust weaponry as a mechanical analog to biomicron-sized mechanized dust, which is distributed as an aerosol and inhaled into the lungs. Dust mechanically bores into lung tissue and exudes various pathological missions. Pathological missions. A wholly new class of weaponry which is legal. That's what these guys are talking about. While you're at home on your phone looking at Instagram, people's bullshit lives, these people are talking about micron-sized dust particles that have pathological missions. If technologies like HAARP, which you can look through yourself, have the ability to change climate, to create climate, and create earthquakes, you think that their technology hasn't advanced enough to be able to create these nanofibers that serve as transmission signals? Talk about transhumanism. Practically cyborgs. Moving into 2020, who knows what the world has for us? They have many ways that they interact, the aerosol spraying, with the HAARP technologies. They're interrelated. And they have to define the things that are legal and illegal, because to the extent to which they're performing these experiments are borderline crazy. The next slide on the NASA slideshow headlines, "What is apparently quote-unquote legal?" And under it has a few bulletins. It says, what is illegal? What's legal, right? Legal is microwave radio frequency, anti-functional and anti-personnel weaponry. Chemical anti-functional weaponry. Chemical psychological effects via sensory organs weaponry. Chemical personnel incapacitation weaponry. And it has quote-unquote non-warfare parentheses, e.g. hostage terrorism only. Psy-war, acoustic weaponry, and mechanical microdust. Now, like I've said before, they have been spraying aluminum, borium, strontium, lithium, and various numbers of other very strange particles. And we are all inhaling these. We don't know what type of ideas these people are trying to come up with for whatever reason. But what we can do is equip ourselves with the proper instruments to be able to measure those toxic metals in our environment. And guess what? We have already. The levels of lead in Mount Shasta in approximately a few months are incredibly vast. And you can see in the World Health Organization, what is the accepted level of lead before it becomes toxic in your body. And our environment is filled with dangerous levels of aluminum, dangerous levels of strontium and borium. And these things are being used for a technological purpose, but it also seems, and it kind of goes without saying, it's a form of biological warfare. Because if people on NASA are talking about micronized smart dust having pathological emissions, what's the interest? And really, the only question that we really ask ourselves is where's the paper trail? And trust me, it's all there. It's not really a giant mystery. It's only a mystery to people who don't want to do the research, man. It's only a mystery to the people who don't want to put their time and effort and to find out what's going on. At the end of the day, dude, it's you. You're going to make the decisions. They're going to increase your quality of life or decrease it. It's actually really quite strange that, all this information, it should also humble you in a way. Because you know that you are not the smartest person in the world, and you actually don't know what's going on in the world, and there's people in part of the world that possess technology that we can't even understand. And the information I provided is not for you to run away, be scared, or fear, but rather the exact opposite. To know that because you are informed, you're going to take the necessary measures to be able to fight back with proper supplementation, proper lifestyle care, proper education. There's all sorts of ways to be able to deal with this knowledge. And it's naive to think that these things don't matter. But you see, you have to understand that it's only increasing. More and more EMF waves are being produced every single day through technology. Way, way stronger ones all the time. We don't know what happens. We don't know. What's the effect going to be in 50, 60 years from now? If we already see that there's cognitive decline because of the amount of EMF around and sleeping issues and all sorts of things, what about in a few years? It's going to be more in our face than ever. And because people's inability to act on questions and just complain and whine and yell, things are never get solved like that. No matter how evil or whatever we believe people to be, people are people, man. We all have to deal with whatever. We're in this world. We have to deal with the consequences. And it's a collective effort. It's not a fucking 1%. It's not like people, just a group of 20, a million, or 2 million. It's a collective effort, and everyone's responsible. Let me see. I think I have one more thing to show you guys, because I think I might have covered a lot of stuff here, but I'm honestly going to leave all the ways that you can heal yourself for the next episode. And I know you guys are dying to know what you can do. You can search up things online. I'm sure you'll find some stuff. But I'm going to come back at you guys with some verified information on what legitimately works and what doesn't. What can increase your quality of life in your house. Because at least that's what we can control. Right? We can't control other people and what they do. We can control me. I control me. That's all I have control over. So let's not fucking blow this out of proportion and take this a step at a time and do the proper applications. So with all that being said, I'm going to leave you guys with all my links that I've referenced throughout the podcast, so you guys can take a look for yourself. Because obviously I'm not here to convince anybody of anything. I'm only here to share what I feel are some of my concerns. And honestly, the next episode is where it's going to be at. And hopefully you guys are excited. Please make sure to review and rate. That helps me a ton, right? I'm doing this for free, guys, right? I'm taking time out of my day. And, it takes hours, especially if you are someone like me who's very anal about how everything has to be meticulous, exactly how I want it. So I end up biting myself in the tail. But, I'm doing this out of love. So thank you guys for your feedback, for the ratings, for everything that you guys done to be able to keep this podcast going. I 100% appreciate it. And that's it, guys. One love. Peace out. Until next one.